There's nothing more we can do. Those words echoed like thunder in André's mind. The consultation room seemed to spin, and everything around him became a blurred stain. The oncologist was speaking, but he could no longer hear. He only saw the doctor's lips moving as his world collapsed around him. André had always been a man of faith, but at that moment everything seemed to fall apart. At 42 years old, with a loving wife and 2 young children, he was the pillar of his family. He worked as a bus driver, waking up early every day to provide for them. He never complained. He was the kind of person who, even on the toughest days, found a reason to smile. But now he could only think about the end. Advanced hepatocellular carcinoma. That was the name of the nightmare that had haunted him for months. The constant fatigue, the loss of appetite, the unbearable abdominal pain. At first, he thought it was just work stress, the toll of his demanding routine. But then came the diagnosis, and with it, a long and painful journey of treatments, chemotherapy, radiation therapy, surgeries, all in vain. The tumor grew voraciously, devouring his hopes, his life. That afternoon, as André left the hospital, he stopped in the middle of the hallway. He felt the weight of a lifetime on his shoulders. He thought of Larissa, his wife. How would he tell her that the doctors had given up, that there was no more treatment, and that all that remained was to wait for the inevitable? He thought of Gabriel and Luisa, his children. They were still so young, so innocent. How could he explain to a child that their father wouldn't be there anymore to help them with puzzle? With slow and heavy steps he walked to the parking lot. He sat in the car, and for the first time in a long while, he cried. He cried for all the things he hadn't lived, for the promises he couldn't keep, for the dreams that would never come true. But above all, he cried out of fear of leaving. When he finally got home, the forced smile he gave upon seeing Larissa didn't fool anyone. She knew him better than anyone. "What did the doctor say?" she asked, her voice trembling, almost whispering. André lowered his eyes, unable to respond. She understood. In the days that followed, the house remained silent, a suffocating silence, heavier than any words. Friends and family visited, trying to bring some comfort. But the truth was, there was nothing to say. Everyone knew it was only a matter of time. Then something unexpected happened. That same week, while André was trying to sleep, he felt a strange warmth coursing through his body. It was an almost comforting sensation, like an invisible embrace. He opened his eyes and, for a moment, he thought he saw a soft light filling the room. He blinked a few times, thinking it was just the effect of the pain medication, but the light remained, gentle and serene. "It's all right," a voice whispered in his mind. André looked around, confused. There was no one there, just him and Larissa, who was sleeping beside him. "I'm with you," the voice repeated, and this time he felt an inexplicable peace. He closed his eyes again, allowing himself to relax, and fell asleep like he hadn't in a long time. The next morning he woke up with a strange feeling of lightness. The pain, which usually woke him during the night, seemed to have eased. It must be the morphine, he thought, though he knew the dosage hadn't changed. Larissa noticed something different about him, a kind of calmness she hadn't seen in months. "Are you okay?" she asked, stroking his face. "I am," he replied, and for the first time he truly believed his own words. But what could it have been? An illusion created by despair? A vain hope clinging to the impossible? Or perhaps something far beyond what he could understand at that moment? In the days that followed, André's routine began to change. The pain that once kept him bedridden for hours became more bearable. He still felt tired, but it was as if a heavy cloud was beginning to lift. Larissa noticed that he was trying to get up earlier, have breakfast with the kids, and even take walks in the yard, enjoying the morning breeze. It was subtle, But there was something different about him, an almost imperceptible renewed energy. In the neighborhood church, news of André's health had spread quickly. He was well loved by everyone, and despite the grim diagnosis, the prayers for him never stopped. During a Sunday Mass, Father John asked the congregation to unite in a chain of faith and hope. "Let us believe in the impossible as God taught us. Let us ask for a miracle in our brother André's life," he said, his voice emotional, hands raised to the sky. Then a woman stood up in the middle of the crowd. It was Donna Clusa, a 78-year-old lady known for her unshakable faith and the stories she told of miracles and healings. She approached the altar and, with tear-filled eyes, asked to speak. The priest nodded. "I know what you're thinking. That medicine has done all it can, and now all we can do is wait. But I've seen things you wouldn't believe. I've seen people on the brink of death come back to life. I've seen diseases vanish without explanation. We cannot give up. We cannot accept that this is the final word," she said with a conviction that made everyone in the church hold their breath. Donna Clusa then shared news about a spiritual retreat that would soon take place at a sanctuary known for its miracles. "I feel it in my heart that André needs to go there. I can't explain it, but I feel there's something waiting for him in that place," she finished, leaving a reverent silence in the air. When Larissa heard this, a spark of hope ignited in her chest. Could it be possible? What if Donna Clusa was right? What if there was still a chance, no matter how small? She talked to André that night, but he, ever the skeptic, just shook his head. "I don't know, Larry. We've been to so many places, seen so many doctors. What more can I expect?" She held his hands, looking deep into his eyes. "Love, I know you're tired, that it's hard to believe, but what if? What if it's true? If there's even the slightest chance that something could happen? We can't just give up without trying everything, can we?" André saw the glimmer of hope in her eyes. He knew that this journey wasn't just his, it was the whole family's. Gabriel and Louisa, though too young to fully understand, were suffering too. And Larissa. Oh, how strong she was. She had been there, steadfast by his side, holding everything together without ever wavering. Maybe he owed her this, owed it to them, a final attempt. A few days later, there they were in the car, driving along a winding road towards the sanctuary. The trip was long and tiring. André, lying in the back seat, felt his body heavy, but in his heart, something was beginning to change. It was as if the prospect of doing something new, of seeking an unknown hope, was bringing him a bit of peace. When they arrived at the sanctuary, they were greeted by a crowd of pilgrims. People from all corners of the country had come to this place, each carrying their own pain, their own plea. It was an atmosphere charged with faith and expectation. André had never seen anything like it. There was a palpable energy in the air, something he couldn't explain. That afternoon, during a collective prayer, he felt weak. He had to sit on a bench while Larissa and the children watched the ceremony. And it was there, in that moment of vulnerability, that something surprising happened. A woman approached him. She had a calm expression and a gaze that conveyed a deep sense of peace. She introduced herself as Teresa and said she had worked at the sanctuary for many years. "I felt I needed to speak with you, André," she said so naturally that he didn't even ask how she knew his name. "You're here for a very special reason. I know the journey so far has been tough, but you still have a purpose. You need to believe that." He remained silent, trying to understand what her words meant. Teresa continued, "Sometimes healing doesn't happen the way we expect. It can be a miracle that transforms us from within, that prepares us for something greater. But for that to happen, you need to open yourself up. You need to allow hope to come in." André felt a shiver run down his spine. Those words struck deeply in his heart, and for the first time he allowed himself to believe, however cautiously, that something extraordinary might happen. That night, The sanctuary was illuminated by hundreds of candles flickering in the gentle breeze. The scent of incense mingled with the fragrance of flowers adorning the altar, creating an almost ethereal atmosphere. People knelt in prayer, some with tears in their eyes, others with looks of hope. André sat on a stone bench, taking it all in. The scene felt unreal, as if he were in a dream. Larissa approached and sat beside him, holding his hand. "Are you feeling okay?" she asked, looking at him with concern. André nodded slightly. "I think so. It's just strange. This place, the people, everything feels so intense, like I can sense what they're feeling." At that moment, Teresa, the woman who had spoken to him earlier, appeared again. "You came at the right time. Tonight we'll have a special vigil with prayers for healing and inner peace. I think it would be good for you to participate." She smiled, and before walking away handed André a small folded piece of paper. "Read it when you're ready." André looked at the paper in his hand. It was small and simple, yet he felt an unexpected weight as he held it. He slipped it into his pocket without opening it and turned his attention back to the vigil that was about to begin. Soft hymns filled the air, and the priest's voice echoed through the night, speaking of faith, hope, and the power of believing in the impossible. As the ceremony progressed, André began to feel a strange tingling in his legs and arms. It was as if an energy was pulsing through his body. He closed his eyes and took a deep breath, trying to understand what was happening. Then he remembered the paper Teresa had given him. With trembling hands he reached into his pocket, pulled it out, and slowly unfolded it. The message was short and to the point. "What you seek is within you. Close your eyes, listen to your heart, and let faith guide you." André reread those words several times. Within me, he thought. He had always searched for answers outside himself, in doctors, treatments, places, but he had never looked within. With a hesitance that felt almost childlike, he did what the message suggested. He closed his eyes and tried to quiet his mind. The noise around him seemed to fade away, and a deep silence took over. In that silence he felt it. First a gentle pulse in his chest, as though his heart was trying to communicate. Then a wave of peace spread throughout his body. He couldn't explain it, but it felt as if he were connected to something greater, something beyond his understanding. And then a memory surfaced, one he hadn't revisited in a long time. He saw himself as a child, running through the fields at his grandparents' farm. He remembered the smell of the grass, the warmth of the sun on his skin, the feeling of freedom. But there was more. He recalled one specific day when, after a storm, he and his grandfather found a small bird, soaked and shivering from the cold. His grandfather gently picked it up, placed it in a makeshift nest, and cared for the little bird every day. André, curious, asked, "Grandpa, is it going to die?" And his grim eyes. André had never forgotten that moment. The bird recovered, and a few weeks later it flew away, leaving the nest behind. "A little care and a little faith," he repeated in his mind. When he opened his eyes, he saw Larissa watching him curiously. He hugged her tightly, feeling a mix of emotion and hope. The vigil lasted throughout the night. Each prayer, each hymn seemed to reach deeper into André's soul. He began to realize that the healing he sought wasn't just physical. It was healing of the soul, an inner transformation. It felt as though a long dormant part of him was slowly awakening, filling him with a strength he thought he had lost. At the end of the ceremony, Teresa approached him once again. "You felt it, didn't you?" she asked with a knowing smile. André didn't know how to respond. He had felt so many things, so many emotions, that it was hard to put them into words. But he knew that something inside him had changed. "This is only the beginning," Teresa said, as if reading his thoughts. "The real journey starts now. Keep believing. Healing, whatever form it takes, begins within us." The next morning, before they left the sanctuary, André took one last look at the place. Something inside him told him that this was a turning point, the start of a new phase. He still had many doubts, many unanswered questions, but for the first time in a long time, he felt that he wasn't alone. There was something or someone guiding him, helping him to move forward. As they got into the car, Larissa held his hand. "And now what do we do?" she asked gently. André looked into her eyes and smiled, a genuine smile. "Now we move forward with faith." The drive home was quiet, but it carried a different energy. There was a lightness, a faint hope reflected in the glances exchanged between André and Larissa. The children slept in the back seat, and the journey seemed shorter than the one going to the sanctuary, as if the weight of despair had been left behind. In the days that followed, André began adopting a different routine. He didn't expect an instant miracle, but he decided to take care of himself like never before. He started following a more balanced diet, guided by a friend who was a nutritionist, and began taking short walks around the neighborhood. It was a huge effort given how weakened his body was, but each step he took felt like a personal victory. Larissa, for her part, dedicated herself tirelessly to supporting him. She would wake up early to prepare juices and special meals, accompany André on his walks, and at night she read passages from the Bible aloud, something they had never done together before. It became a moment of connection, of shared faith, that united them in a new and deeper way. Even so, the illness continued to make its presence known. There were days when André could barely get out of bed. The pain returned with force, and the exhaustion overtook his body, making him question whether any of it made sense. On one of those nights, exhausted and frustrated, he opened up to Larissa. "I don't know if I can do this anymore, Larry. It feels like I'm fighting against a current. Every time I think I'm getting better, the illness pulls me back. Am I just fooling myself?" Larissa, with tears in her eyes, cupped his face with both hands and replied firmly, "André, I don't know what's going to happen, but I know that you're here now, fighting, and that in itself is a miracle. The miracle of you being present, of not giving up. And that's enough for me. It doesn't matter how much time we have as long as we're together. Please don't give up." Her words hit him like a shock. How could he give up when he had so much love surrounding him? How could he give in to despair with Larissa by his side, believing in him, even when he didn't believe in himself? He decided that, even if only for her, he would keep going, one day at a time. One morning, during his usual walk, something unexpected happened. As he passed by a small park, he noticed a circle of people sitting and chatting animatedly. Curious, he stopped to watch. It was a support group for people with serious illnesses and their families. The leader of the group, a bald man with a warm smile, invited him to join. André hesitated for a moment, but eventually accepted. He sat down and listened to the stories each person had to share. They were stories of pain, of overcoming, of loss, but also of love and resilience. These people, whom he had never met before, seemed to understand him in a way no one else could. When it was his turn to speak, André took a deep breath and began. "My name is André. I was diagnosed with liver cancer almost a year ago. The doctors have already told me there's nothing more they can do. I'm not sure if I believe in miracles, but I don't want to give up. I came here because I need to believe that there's a reason for all of this, that maybe there's still something left for me beyond this illness." The silence that followed his words was broken by soft applause and encouraging looks. A woman sitting next to him, named Anna, who wore a colorful scarf on her head, smiled and said, "André, you're not alone. All of us here have been where you are now, and we know how hard it is. But believe me, every day is a gift and you're here fighting. That's already a miracle." Those words echoed in André's mind. For weeks he returned to the group, week after week. He found strength in the stories shared, in the laughter and tears they exchanged. He made friendships he never imagined, and realized that even in pain, there was beauty. There was life. It was during one of those meetings, that an older gentleman named Carlos shared something that deeply moved André. "I don't know how much longer I have, but I've learned that the miracle isn't about being free of the disease. The miracle is living fully, despite it. The miracle is waking up and feeling the sun on your skin. It's being able to hug the people you love. It's feeling gratitude for another day." Those words became etched in his mind. André started seeing life through new eyes. He began to value each moment, no matter how simple. Having coffee with Larissa, taking the kids to school, even the hardest days took on a different meaning. He knew time was uncertain, but he was determined to make the most of it. One rainy afternoon, while drawing with Gabriel and Luisa in the living room, André had an idea. He grabbed a blank sheet of paper and started writing a wish list. They weren't grand things, just small moments he wanted to experience with his family. Watching the sunset on the beach, having a picnic in the park, seeing the kids decorate the Christmas tree. Larissa found the list later and moved, promised they would do it all together. And so they began checking off the wishes, one by one. The first was a short trip to the beach. It was winter, and the cold wind blew sharply. But for André, it was like a breath of life. He felt the sand under his feet, the smell of the sea, the sound of the waves. It was as if life was giving him a gift, even in the middle of the storm. Despite the moments of joy, the reality of the illness didn't disappear. There were days of intense pain, of overwhelming uncertainty. But now, André had something he didn't have before, a faith that went beyond any diagnosis, a faith in life, in love, in every moment he shared with his family. Weeks passed, and André continued to fight the disease, but something had changed within him. He felt emotionally stronger, more connected to the life around him. He was determined to complete every item on his list, to live each day as a gift, not a sentence. The family grew even closer, and every simple moment became a celebration, with hope staying alive, even in the face of adversity. It was a Saturday morning when Larissa received an unexpected phone call. On the other end, André's oncologist sounded excited, something unusual for him. "Mrs. Larissa, I'm sorry to call on a Saturday, but we need André to come to the hospital as soon as possible. We've received some new test results and we need to discuss them in person." Larissa's heart raced. It was unusual for the doctor to want to see them so suddenly, especially on a weekend. She tried not to get her hopes up, but a spark of hope began to flicker in her chest. André, noticing her tension, asked what was going on. When she explained, he too felt a mix of anxiety and fear. What could be so urgent? When they arrived at the hospital, they were led directly into the doctor's office. The doctor had a serious expression, but there was something different in his eyes, something André hadn't seen in a long time. "André, Larissa, please sit down," he said, taking a deep breath. "I need to be honest with you. Over the past few months, I've been monitoring your condition very closely. We've done all the routine tests, and the results were never good. But now, something has changed." He laid out some X-rays and CT scans on the table. Larissa held André's hand tightly, her heart racing. "These scans are from 3 months ago, when we told you there was nothing more we could do." He then showed a new image, taken just the previous week. "And these are the results now." André looked at the images, not understanding. He wasn't a doctor and couldn't interpret what he was seeing, but the doctor pointed to a specific area. This was the tumor. It was growing aggressively, and we didn't expect it to shrink, not with the treatments we had already tried. But here, he pointed to the new image, the tumor is significantly smaller. In fact, it's almost gone. Silence filled the room. André blinked several times, trying to process what he was hearing. What does this mean?" he asked, his voice trembling. The doctor sighed, a mix of relief and disbelief on his face. "It means we're seeing something that medicine can't explain. We repeated the tests thinking it could be an error, but it's not. We don't know how, but your body is responding in a way we've never seen before." Larissa began to cry, holding André's hands as he sat there, still in shock. He didn't know what to feel. Joy, fear, hope. It was all swirling together in a whirlwind of emotions. "Are you saying that I'm cured?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. The doctor smiled cautiously. "I wouldn't say cured, but the progress you've made is incredible. We'll keep monitoring, but what's happening is a miracle, to be honest. I don't have any other explanation." As they left the doctor's office, André felt his legs go weak. Larissa held him up, both of them laughing and crying at the same time. It was as if a massive weight had been lifted off their shoulders. The news spread quickly among friends and family. Everyone wanted to understand what had happened, how someone who had been given a death sentence was now breathing new life. And then something even more incredible happened. Instead of withdrawing, as many might do, André decided to share his story with the support group he attended. "I don't know how to explain what happened," he said at a meeting the following week. "But what I do know is that over these past months, all of you have given me something no treatment could. Faith. Faith in life. Faith in the impossible. And maybe, just maybe, that made all the difference." The group members applauded him, deeply moved. Some were crying, others smiling, but all felt that something extraordinary was happening. Anna, the woman with the colorful scarf, stood up and hugged him. "André, you've given us hope. You are our miracle." As the days passed, André slowly began to resume his life. He returned to work for a few hours each week, something he had never imagined possible again. He and Larissa took a second honeymoon, this time with the kids, visiting places they had always dreamed of seeing. Every day was a new discovery, a new chance to live fully. There were still challenges. The illness hadn't been completely defeated, and André knew that, but the way he faced it was different. There was no more fear, only the determination to make the most of every moment. He became an inspiration to many, and people from all over began reaching out to him, seeking comfort and hope in his story. One night, as he sat on the porch looking at the starry sky, Larissa joined him. "Do you realize how much you've changed, André? Not just the illness, but you, inside. You're a new person." He smiled, holding her hand. "I think I understand what Teresa meant back at the sanctuary. Sometimes healing starts from within. I don't know how much time I have left, but I know I'm living. And that, Larissa, that's already a miracle." The months that followed brought a new routine for André and his family. Despite the uncertainties that still surrounded his health, he embraced life with renewed intensity. News of his inexplicable improvement spread, and many people began to see him as a symbol of hope, someone who defied the odds and refused to give in to despair. André was invited to share his story at churches, support groups, and even on small local radio shows. He spoke with humility, never presenting himself as a miracle or an example of triumph, but as someone who had found in faith and family love the strength to keep going. He always emphasized that regardless of what might happen in the future, he had already received the greatest gift: time, to live moments he once thought were lost. One day, after giving a small talk at a school, a young woman approached him with tears in her eyes. "I heard your story, and I felt I had to tell you something," she said hesitantly. "My mom has been battling cancer for 2 years. We've already lost all hope, but hearing you gave me strength. I just wanted to thank you for not giving up." André, moved, held her hands. "I understand what you're going through, and I know it's not always easy to have hope, but what I've learned is that sometimes the miracle we ask for doesn't come in the way we expect. The miracle might be in a smile, in a conversation, in a hug. I don't know what's going to happen with your mom, but I do know that every moment you have together is precious. Don't stop believing." The young woman hugged him, and he felt the connection of shared pain and hope that united them in that moment. That conversation, like so many others he'd had over the past months, touched him deeply. He realized that his story, his suffering, and his doubts were not his alone. They belonged to everyone who in some way was struggling to find meaning in the midst of pain. On an autumn afternoon, André received a phone call from the sanctuary he had visited months earlier. It was Teresa, the woman who had spoken to him on that special night. "André, I would like to invite you to a celebration we're having here next month. It's a gathering of people whose lives have been touched in some way. We feel you should be present." He accepted the invitation, feeling that this place in some way was connected to everything he had experienced. When he arrived at the sanctuary, the atmosphere was one of peace and gratitude. People from different backgrounds and stories had gathered there to share their experiences of faith, healing, and transformation. Teresa welcomed him with a warm hug and led him to the main hall of the sanctuary, where several people were already assembled, talking and exchanging stories. André felt an instant familiarity with the environment. It was as if the place had a special energy, a meeting point for lives marked by difficulties, but also by miracles. On the makeshift stage, a series of moving testimonies began to unfold. Each person had a unique story of overcoming challenges, whether they were small or large victories against illness, financial hardships, or family issues. André listened intently, feeling a part of something much larger, a tapestry of human experiences interwoven by the thread of faith. When he was called to speak, he slowly ascended the stage, feeling a mix of nervousness and gratitude. He stood before the microphone and looked at the people in front of him. Everyone was waiting for his words, but André knew it wasn't about him. It was about the message his story could bring to everyone there. "When I first came here, I was without hope," he began, his voice soft yet firm. "I had accepted that my time was running out, that the illness would prevail. But something happened here, in this place. I found peace, I found faith, and above all, I found the desire to fight. Not for the healing of my body, but for the healing of my soul." His words flowed almost naturally. He spoke about the difficult moments, the doubts, the sleepless nights, but also about the small victories, the walks beside Larissa, the laughter of the children, the warmth of each hug. He shared how he had discovered a new purpose in his journey, even when the end seemed inevitable. "Today I stand before you not as someone who has conquered a disease, but as someone who has learned to truly live, regardless of what the doctors said. Believe me, the greater miracle was not the tumor shrinking, but rather that I learned to live each moment with gratitude and love." André paused, looking at each face in the audience. Some had tears in their eyes, others were smiling, and he felt a deep connection with everyone there. "If there's one thing I would like to leave with you, it's this. Don't wait for a miracle to start valuing life. The true miracle is waking up every day and having the chance to love, to laugh, to cry, to be present." As he descended from the stage, he was greeted with warm applause and many hugs. He felt light, as if he had fulfilled an important mission. Teresa embraced him again, her eyes shining with pride. "You brought a message that many needed to hear, André. Thank you for sharing your journey with us." Later, while walking through the sanctuary, André felt a presence beside him. It was a humble-looking woman with a colorful scarf covering her head. "May I speak with you, my son?" she asked, her voice gentle. He nodded, curious. "I came here today seeking an answer," she began, gazing at the horizon. "My grandson is in the hospital, very ill. The doctors say there's nothing more to be done, but I can't accept that. I have been praying, asking for a sign, anything to help me keep believing. And today, listening to you, something changed in me. Maybe I can't understand the purpose of all this, but I now know I'm not alone. You gave me the strength I needed." André felt tears welling up in his eyes. Her words touched his heart deeply. He held the woman's hands and with a smile said, "We never know what life has in store for us, but we must continue to believe that somehow everything has a purpose. Your grandson feels your love, and that above all is already a miracle." They stood there in silence for a few minutes, sharing a peace that transcended words. When the woman stepped away, André felt a profound gratitude for everything he had experienced. He didn't know how much time he had left, but he knew he was making a difference, that his story was in some way helping others find hope amid darkness. That night back at the hotel, Larissa asked how he was feeling. André smiled, a serene smile filled with meaning. "I'm at peace, Larry. For the first time in a long time, I feel that everything is exactly as it should be. I don't know what the future holds for us, but I know that as long as we have each other, we can face anything." She hugged him tightly, tears in her eyes. "You are my miracle, André. I will never stop believing that." The following months brought new challenges. André's health continued to fluctuate with ups and downs, but he never lost hope. Whenever he could, he returned to the sanctuary to give thanks, to renew his faith, and above all, to keep inspiring others. During one of those visits, already feeling more fragile, André encountered Teresa once again. She led him to a small chapel at the top of the hill, where a stunning view of the valley unfolded before them. "André, I don't know what the future holds for you, but I feel that your mission here is just beginning. No matter what happens, remember that your story has already touched many hearts, and that is what truly matters." He nodded, moved. He knew Teresa was right. Life was unpredictable, filled with surprises and challenges, but as long as there was love and faith, he would be at peace. André never knew how to explain what exactly had happened to him, whether the healing was a miracle, a coincidence, or simply a response of his body to the newfound inner strength he had discovered. But that didn't matter. What mattered was that he had lived intensely, loved unreservedly, and left a mark of hope on the lives of everyone who crossed his path. On his last visit to the sanctuary, already quite weakened, he sat on the stone bench where it had all begun, looked up at the sky and whispered, "Thank you." He felt a deep peace enveloping his body and closed his eyes, feeling the gentle breeze brush against his face like a final embrace from life. Larissa beside him held his hand. "Shall we go home?" she asked with a sad yet loving smile. André nodded, and together they walked in silence, ready to face whatever came next, knowing that the greatest miracle had already occurred, the transformation of their souls. After André's passing, Larissa continued her mission to share his story. She wrote a book, The Miracle of Living, which inspired thousands of people around the world. She and the children regularly visited the sanctuary, keeping André's memory and his message of hope alive. André's legacy endured, not as an example of physical healing, but as a reminder that even in the darkest moments, we can find light. That sometimes the true miracle is not in overcoming illness, but in living fully, loving deeply, and finding peace in each day we are given. And so André's story continued to touch hearts, showing that the miracle of life resides in every smile, in every hug, and in every moment of love that we share. And have you experienced the miracle of living fully today?